Your Redditor needs new meme clips lol.
I have a name, you know.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Diseases and younglings. If you want to talk about the polar opposite of a dynamic duo, possibly even a gruesome twosome of things being related to one another, then look no further than this reality. Ask any parent how many times they've been sick since having offspring, and they'll likely tell you it's probably easier just to ask them how many times they've actually been healthy. But you know what else has the same track record? Shadowy government organizations and also diseases. In the events of Little Monster and not the 1989 version with Fred Savage, I know, you're crushed. A teacher and a guy trying to hit up said teacher head out to Pleasant Valley, conveniently located right next to a US base, where experiments are being conducted. Inadvertently letting out one of the infected, Pleasant Valley descends into chaos, rapidly transforming into Unpleasant Valley as the teacher and Dave attempt to keep about a dozen younglings alive. But what is this disease? Are there any differences in the functionality of it, and how does it bypass the immune system so effectively? Well, let's learn about that in today's episode. But first, this episode is sponsored by Raycon. Are you ready to experience premium audio sound wherever you go? Well, if you are, then head to buyraycon.com/Roanoke25 to get 25% off Raycon's best-selling everyday headphones. Don't miss out. Head to buyraycon.com/Roanoke25. Recently, I got a pair of Raycon's headphones to try out for myself at the gym, and I gotta tell you, game-changing. If you like their earbuds options, then you'll absolutely love their headphones. With hybrid active noise cancellation, drowning out most sounds, they offer you a quiet place to kick back and relax, whether at the gym, which you shouldn't be relaxing at, you should be lifting, at work, or possibly even on a call. Plus, having a 40-hour battery life, I'm not lying to you, I charged these things 3 weeks ago. It lasted an entire week of lifting, which, as you know, is a pretty loud environment, the entire cruise I was just on, and I'm still using them to listen to music while I write. I have yet to charge them again. And if I do, 15 minutes of charge actually yields 2 hours of battery life. Not to mention, if you aren't happy with it, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy, no questions asked, which means, you know, what do you got to lose? But I imagine you're gonna like these things as much as I do. So if you're ready to upgrade your audio experience, then head to buyraycon.com/Roanoke25 to get 25% off Raycon's everyday headphones. All right, let's get back to it. But before moving on, I want to thank you guys for watching. Without you guys, none of this would even be possible, so I do appreciate your support. I'm streaming over on Twitch under Roanoke Games. Also, I'm live streaming on Roanoke Gaming, the main YouTube channel for members. Also, check out Roanoke Tales for Cryptids and the Discord where movies are watched that end up here. Links for everything in the description. We kick off our story with a couple arguing, which is a true classic. As they bail out of lunch, they get in their car and continue said argument. Heading to the store, they keep going at it, absolutely wild to be yelling at each other in public like that. Also, it appears as though she wants younglings and he sort of is on the fence, and by that I mean he doesn't want kids at all. That usually results in one thing: anchor baby inbound. Also, all I'm saying is if you do this in front of your friends, expect to just never get invited out again. So finally, Dave says screw this, takes his 2 turntables and a microphone, and then breaks up with his girlfriend and leaves. So now we jump over to another youngling just staring at Dave. He asks how long he'll be there, which evidently it is now Teddy McGiggle time. This sacred ritual taking place at the same time each day, which means it's actually 3 in the afternoon if you don't know. But I mean, come on, you know who Teddy McGiggle is, stop lying. Emoting on Dave's hangover, they start playing some Left 4 Dead instead. Hell yeah, brother. Dave's sister, Tess, then comes in, turning off the game as they eat what is called pizza for dinner. Looking at this alleged pizza, it's tofu and broccoli. That is not pizza. The tractor also enjoys eating it, apparently. So it would seem, though, that Felix is actually allergic to everything, supposedly. Talking about Dave's ex-girlfriend, randomly Felix says he came out of a test tube, which, why does he know that? Also, want some existential horror in your life? Probably because you're watching this channel. Now, obviously, more testing needs to be done to confirm this, but likely you've heard about the whole thing concerning populations across the globe. Basically, well, in most places, going down because birth rates are declining. Recently, I actually heard about a test that was conducted on fish where BPA, the stuff that was used in every single plastic item ever not too long ago, it's still out there actually because we have a giant garbage patch floating around the ocean, and no, not just England. Essentially, that was dumped into a fish tank. What's interesting is the fish didn't really seem to have too many issues at first. They continued reproducing, lived their lives, and it wasn't really too much of a problem. However, the next generation either was 50% sterile, or the ones that were able to have offspring had decreased viability, deformities, and other problems continue to just arise within the fish tank. Now, there were healthy reproducing fish in the population, but the population of fish appeared to be severely hampered because of essentially all the other ones that could not have offspring. Now, is this happening with humanity right now? It's really hard to say, given that this was just one test and other variables could have absolutely polluted the results. So I say this all to say, it may be a literal possibility that for reproduction, nature's way may be totally screwed for a while until we get all the BPA out of here. Now, not totally screwed. People are obviously still having kids, but it potentially makes it more difficult. Test tube babies might be the way forward. So remember, when you get out there and make some breakthrough in some container that's going to solve all of our problems, for the love of God, test the effects of the chemicals first. So, reading Felix's story before bed, the camera then pans across to Dave, who went and got an actual proper pizza, as he starts crashing out over the story. Those kids' stories hit different as an adult. The giving tree is one example. So Dave then wakes Felix up later saying he needs his help. Taking him to his ex-girlfriend's place, he has a sudden realization that he needed to fix things and tells her he wants to have younglings also. Heading inside her apartment, she's already got another guy in there, as Dave then asks if she wants to marry him. Brother, probably not the time for that. A fight then breaks out, as one might expect over this wonderful turn of events, as Dave couldn't find his way out of a wet paper bag. Also, I think someone needs to get Felix out of here. He does not need to be seeing this. Also, here's some advice from Papa Roanoke. Big thing, ignore the ape portion of your brain. If you find your significant other with another person, like, let's think about it for a second. If y'all are still together, your significant other is trash. And likely the other person, if they know, is also trash. You really want to fight for that? So if your significant other knows and the other person doesn't, I mean, just your significant other is trash, and the other person doesn't deserve to be fought. And if you guys aren't together, as in this case, really nobody has claim over anyone concerning a relationship. So it's just kind of like, whatever. So ignore the ooga dooga part of your thinking and just pull a 180 and leave. It's so much easier, and you'll thank yourself in about a month when you're not in jail. So plenty of other people out there are not hot garbage, so just keep looking. So Dave then grabs his bong and leaves with Felix, or leaves him behind anyways, and then comes back for him as they head out. Getting back to his sister's house, Felix then spills spaghetti out of his pocket about what just happened, as she tells him to get out of his house. Not Felix, but Dave. Dave then starts crying, sobbing, some would claim, as Felix then asks why he can't just stay on the couch. Tess then folds, seeing a grown man sob, and says he needs to pull his weight if he's going to stay there. Taking Felix to school the next day, as Dave calls one of the kids there douchebag. Like, it appears like half the class makes fun of Felix, so like I get Dave's point. Of course, conversely, Felix already has a girlfriend named Beth. I mean, Felix is a Giga Chad in my book, it appears, but heading over to drop Felix off, he then spots Miss Caroline. Caroline is mighty fine, but it's claimed in the ancient texts, she's the reason for a word. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it. Maybe I'll remember it later. So Dave immediately makes fun of the larger kid. Fantastic way to hit on a woman, as Dave, pull up your pants, man. Dave then calls her a beacon of positivity, and he says his mom is going through a breakdown. Not his mom, but Felix's mom is going through a breakdown. But luckily, Uncle Dave is here to help, as then he smashes one of the kids' heads in a door, which is the one that was picking on Felix. Miss Caroline then starts her class as Felix stands there like a little bit of a weirdo. The smashed head kid gets picked up later as Dave comes to pick up Felix. Felix apparently had a rough day today, not really sure why, but a woman then breaks in when Dave is trying to hit on Miss Caroline, as Beth's older brother is sick, and I bet you thought that's where the infection starts. They got you, because they got me. You buffoon! Dave then volunteers to chaperone the field trip as Dave's sister gives him the rundown on how to give Felix his insulin. Tess says she knows he's only going to the trip tomorrow though, because she's suspicious of his reasoning. She continues on by saying every father has made a pass at Miss Caroline and all of them have been shot down. She doesn't understand why else Dave would volunteer. Well, obviously out of the goodness of his heart. And he's using a brain to think, technically. Man, Dave is hot and bothered for this woman, as then he puts a picture of a class back on the wall. I think that is the literal class picture. It is. I do believe you get a one-way ticket straight to the basement for that. So the next day, Miss Caroline is singing Taylor Swift to all the offspring, and this has to be against the Geneva Convention. The bus is broken down as Dave sits in the back, absolutely ruining the day that he was born. Shouldn't have opened the floodgates to that picture, brother. Maybe you are in the basement. So Felix then asks if Miss Caroline could sing another song, and then she turns to Dave saying he's actually a singer and in a band. She goes on to claim he is allegedly a professional. So the younglings then ask him to sing a song, as he agrees. There is no way this goes well. So getting in front of the bus, he then starts quoting Bible verses for some reason, as he breaks out into what can be considered I guess, Australian metal, which sounds like someone beating a baby with a cat. Miss Caroline then stops him before he gets too lost in the sauce singing about his absent father, as the bus is now fixed and mercifully they can get out of there. Continuing their journey, they're headed to Pleasant Valley, which has mini golf. Also right next to it is a US Army testing facility, which the placement is absolutely hilarious. Down in the depths of the tunnels, which definitely don't exist in these facilities, stop asking, two security guards talk about how many deadly animals there are in Australia. As they drive their Austin Powers golf cart in a small tunnel, they find someone snacking on a scientist in the tunnel. That is just your standard Australian. They fire a few shots at him and he doesn't respond, until finally the other security guard domes him. She calls in the security breach, as then they get a call saying they have a large-scale breach. She leaves the other security guard as the scientist then gets up and bites him. As you will see, this is a fairly common occurrence that they should know that zombies exist. Like, this is like, they casually talk about it later, so why not just dome them from the spot? So first things first, in this beginning interaction, we see already there are physical manifestations of symptoms that will hint at what's going on later. First, these shots directly hit center mass. However, the infected do not appear to even have the slightest reaction to this damage. This would indicate that their sensory neurons have been severely damaged. Now, a case could be made that the damage could be spinal. However, I'm thinking this has to do more with the peripheral nervous system, and my reasoning on that is they are still able to walk and move. If the central nervous system were involved and then damaged, they would not be able to move, and like any damage to the spinal cord, it's basically game over for movement because you can't communicate. So sensory nerves have been, for the most part, destroyed from what we can tell. However, the motor neurons used to innervate the muscular tissues are still viable to a degree. However, from what we can see later, coordination is severely hampered, indicating likely the brain is damaged or having issues communicating. And this would hint on what the infection is and what it chooses to attack, which we will get there in a little bit. As for the other symptoms, it appears if you are bitten, you are infected. Groundbreaking, I know. This disease appears to be transferred by saliva only, as we will come to find out. I severely doubt it's a blood-borne illness, indicating that if I am correct, I think I already have an idea on what this infection is and what it does. But obviously, we need to see more about what's going on with the infected prior to that. At the military base, out of the gate, some people are lost trying to get to Pleasant Valley, which all they had to do was go straight instead of turning right, as an alarm goes off. One of the soldiers then starts getting lost in the sauce, trying to get back into the facility where the breach is, but he looks scared. Like, the containment breach is in there. If you're afraid, doesn't it make more sense to run away from the facility? Heroically, of course. Meanwhile, in Pleasant Valley, everyone is having fun as soldiers drive through, which is a bit concerning to the adults on the bus. And oh my god, Teddy McGiggle is here. Wonderful. I was just hoping he would horrifically pop back up at some point. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is some blippy level of nonsense. I would not let my offspring near this guy, specifically Blippy, mainly because I'm almost 389% certain there's a Harlem Shake video of him somewhere also. Apparently, they are there to learn about the cute Australian animals, which those don't exist. Okay, I mean the koalas are okay, but kangaroos will eviscerate you, the snakes will explode your heart, the spiders are the size of your head, and the jellyfish will paralyze you, and if you paralyze you and you're looking at the sun, you go blind. And if you are to survive all of this, one of the most deadly creatures out there are other Australians who might throw a boomerang at the rusty part of your harness, attaching you to the world, which means you're just sent careening out into the abyss of space. Truly, what are the Australians doing over there? So Miss Caroline gets called over by McGiggle as he makes a pass at her, with Dave watching his possible prospect getting taken away by a man in a polka dot suit. That is a level of hell I don't think I've ever experienced. I don't believe my ego could take that. So entering the petting zoo for some god-awful reason, a song then breaks out with McGiggle singing it. You see the horrors I must endure so that you can watch these videos. The kids then learn how to milk cows, which has Dave watching a little too intently, as then they all dance and do a bunch of random things. Like, I've seen no koalas as of yet, which I figure would be a staple of any Australian petting zoo. That and, I don't know, probably like a giant spider named Frank or something. Dave also whips himself in the eye later. Nice job, brother. Meanwhile, everyone on the base has been turned as someone then yells over the radio about a full-scale breach, with all the turned soldiers and scientists then heading towards Pleasant Valley. Slowly, but still heading there. So as they walk down the hill towards mini-golf, they are stopped by a fence. Somehow, the people are not disturbed, as then one guy backs up directly to get a picture, but I don't know. I don't think there's really a cultural thing here that says, hey, look at this guy covered in blood with his mouth leaking and all this. Let's stand next to it. I think that's it doesn't matter if you speak the same language. Everybody's gonna look at that and be like if I'm in Busan, right, and I see this, just because I'm American and I'm in South Korea doesn't mean I'm like, oh, hey, cool, let me just take a picture. I'm like, yeah, that person's definitely infected with something. I don't want them touching me. Anyhow, so the one woman then runs past Dave later because she's the only one of her group who actually survives. As then he approaches Miss Caroline, which I knew it. This was bugging me the whole time. I recognize her from A Quiet Place Day One. Good Lord, they actually made her lose like a ton of weight for the movie. Like, she's not big by any capacity in this movie, but they pretty much nailed the emaciated look that she had to get for that movie. So anyways, that was bugging the crap out of me. Anyhow, so she walks up to him and then tells him to call her Audrey. Is that an upgrade or not? You be the judge, as then he spots a ring on her finger asking if she's married. She says, well, no, not yet. That's my engagement ring. Dave, how did you miss that ring from the drop? Those are really easy to spot. So starting their tractor ride over to Pig Swill Pond, why would you name it that? Sounds horrific. They come across a soldier eating what I'm guessing is a pig, which is actually interesting as we will come to find out, as this appears to be a much more natural turn of events. The driver then gets off to check it out, as Dave then tells one of the kids, picking on Felix, that actually David thinks that this kid doesn't have a dad either, given that he never sees him when he goes and visits that kid's mom. Using your mom jokes on a 10-year-old. I mean, honestly, that's when they work perfectly. So Caroline then grabs David and tells him that behavior is not acceptable as the driver gets eaten in the background. She then goes to tell the driver that they need to go as she realizes there are zombies afoot. David then sees this as Audrey grabs a pitchfork and stabs it through the soldier. David then gets the tractor started as Felix kind of coaches him through the whole thing, as then the driver gets back up from her bite. Audrey then spears the soldier to the tree, covers him up so the kids won't see how disturbing that is. Perhaps they should, so they know to stay away from these things. And then back over at Pleasant Farm, things ain't so pleasant as they drive through, as zombies see them with one woman just running through, which interestingly, they don't really seem that reactive to the trailer. So kind of strangely, we see several things here that convey the mental state of those infected. First, let's start with the actual infection. Moments after being bitten, which typically appears to be from the neck area, the blood of likely the carotid artery carries the infection to the brain. It's clear the blood-brain barrier is actually bypassed at this point, which would indicate that whatever the infection is very, very small. But either way, it enters the neuronal space. Now, some of the virus, which I do believe it is a virus, also appears to be transported to other areas of the body via the circulatory system, which is what we would expect to happen. From here, we need to designate something rather important when it comes to the physical makeup of the brain and nervous system in general. There are neurons that are known to be part of the gray matter, and there are neurons known to be part of the white matter. Gray matter is essentially you. This is where the processing of information takes place and the conscious thought of a person is, well, taking place. However, without the white matter, this is almost useless because the white matter is what facilitates the communication in the brain. Gray matter is typically going to be containing neurons composed of cell bodies, dendrites, and unmyelinated axons, which is not to be confused with demyelinated axons, which demyelinated basically is like your ALS, was a Guillain-Barré syndrome, things like that, which is essentially where the myelin sheath is attacked, which leads to not you being able to move and other issues. Now, ALS is also the cell body is attacked as well, but the point is unmyelinated is how it's supposed to be. And these are just nerve fibers that lack a myelin sheath, which is a fatty insulating layer, and they conduct nerve impulses kind of faster, the myelinated versions versus the unmyelinated versions. So it's more slow, but they play a crucial role in the autonomic nervous system, as well as these sensory pathways. Now, white matter is built different. Their purpose is to transmit these signals and facilitate communication. Having myelinated axons, they can actually speed up in this communication, and it should be known that white matter typically surrounds the gray matter in the spinal cord, as well as in the brain, given it's a communication structure for the most part. Now, when we look at the infection, we see a few things that indicate that it is targeting possibly the white matter, with some gray matter also being kind of hit for whatever purpose it needs. Given that the white matter is used for communication when it is attacked or possibly even outright destroyed, things like sensory information would be disrupted from the peripheral nervous system. Along with this, conscious thought in a person is largely disrupted as well. Not so much because the gray matter is dealing with problems, but because the communication between the areas of the brains have been disrupted due to the white matter incurring damage. But why is this happening? Well, given that this is fast-acting in nature and it is an infection, once bypassing the blood-brain barrier, it appears to have a propensity for targeting specifically the white matter, possibly due to the white matter having the fatty covering on its axons. This may be the actual specified target, given that this is a manufactured sickness instead of your run-of-the-mill wild types. I mean, it doesn't take too much to imagine that if you want to target the white matter of the enemy, not only do you decrease their ability to think, but you also massively impede their ability to move in general. And this clearly would make it much easier to continue through an area, mopping up any resistance. The problem is, with lack of communication comes unintended consequences of disrupted thinking patterns, equaling out here to aggression. Anyhow, this may be for one reason or another that it is like an attractive target, but it could also be just based on chance, given that it appears to potentially have been maybe a failed prototype illness that managed to break containment. But either way, the white matter of the brain is interrupted more regularly, which also still, again, likely some gray matter is affected as well, but as the infection progresses within these neurons, they are either outright destroyed or have their function altered to the point that the brain can no longer talk to itself. However, this would mean that to a degree, the person is consciously still in there, which we will talk about human drives to consume here in a moment, and also what are some outliers and how that may impact the actual presentation of the disease, which I don't think I've actually ever seen in a zombie movie before, so it's pretty interesting. So Audrey then asks who remembers how to play tag, telling them that everyone there is it and they need to avoid them. David can't get the tractor going anymore, as then they get off of it in a conga line and then go to escape with everyone slowly approaching them. David then uses the kids' I think it's spinal bifida walker to keep the zombies away, as then they make their way through, and interestingly, all the animals are on the menu, as then they spot the bus driver being eaten alive not too far away. Changing course, they then head towards the gift shop as McGiggle is hiding out in there. He's a turn in the punch bowl predictably though, because there's no way someone who does that for a living is a cool guy, except for maybe Steve from Blue's Clues. That guy is awesome. Hopefully nothing horrible comes out about him now that I've said that. It's really hard to like celebrities sometimes. So they find a way in as they begin crawling through, as one guy in particular then grabs a fanny pack rather than biting her. David then gets separated as he crawls up a water container out of reach. So I guess it's a good place as any to talk about the human mind and how it most definitely is still in there, just kind of at a decreased capacity. As the zombies attack people, they are still driven by the same instinctual drives that everyone has typically. They also appear somewhat enraged, just slower. So if we look at this from a perspective concerning neurological functioning, we see some areas are still at play while others are not. It would appear that a person who grabbed the bag from Miss Caroline possibly has Down syndrome from what we can tell. This detracting from the standard operation of a brain may have caused him to not so much go after the person, but something that they had on them. Now, this is just all speculative. I have no idea if that's really what they were going for, but it's undeniable that typically the zombies are trying to bite somebody versus this individual who just took a fanny pack. So with others, we see while they do in fact eat people, they most definitely still hunt animals. In this instance, we can see how two brain functionalities result in two different outcomes concerning aggression levels or goals. This would mean that as the brain functions, it has an impact on how exactly the infection is displayed. The brains are still somewhat functioning in the background, like of any human, which since we see they are still hungry for regular animals, indicates that potentially only the hypothalamus in general is disrupted, meaning that they will eat just about anything, but are not just focusing in on humans. Typically, the hypothalamus regulates disgust towards certain actions relating to what you will eat, and if you get hungry enough or the brain is inundated with chemicals incorrectly, you will actually turn and eat anything that you can. This same function is what has allowed people to resort to cannibalism should the need become dire enough. Along with this, the frontal lobe no longer appears to be able to communicate with the amygdala specifically, either making the person more aggressive as it is now, operating unhindered. So as the kids just sit there, the infected are outside the window, but none of them break in, which is interesting. David goes to break in through the top areas and he falls on McGiggle. He starts slapping David as he tries to suffocate him, but refusing to be murdered by someone named McGiggle, he starts beating the hell out of the Z-list celebrity. McGiggle continues the assault, trying to bash in his head as David then staples McGiggle's face a bunch of time before hitting him with his guitar. God's sledgehammer makes an appearance. Heading outside, he then lets the kids in as that one woman from earlier has run literally all over God's green creation and she's still alive. Finding what's left of her group, the radio then talks about how reinforcements have arrived and a perimeter is being set up. David then secures the door, but there's no phone signal, which interestingly appears to be because they are either blocking it. However, it would be just as likely that there's just no signal in Pleasant Valley, given what we will see here in a moment. So Audrey then says it's not meant to be scary, they're just winning the game against those that are playing outside. McGiggle then says everyone is going to die. Okay, so the kids ask where Frogsy is, as McGiggle says he didn't make it, he was eaten. You guys may have to handle McGiggle, I think. He then tells the kid that there's tons of zombies out there, they're not gonna survive, as Audrey now asks what zombies do in the shooty game. Audrey then says that the zombies are basically the same thing and that they're not real, as Felix is like, yeah, Uncle David lets me play Left 4 Dead. McGiggle continues to say the zombies that, they are real, as then he starts yelling at the younglings and then starts crashing out. Audrey tells him to calm down, as then she pulls a conch shell on him, basically putting it up to his abdomen. Well, almost anyhow. I mean, she's threatening him. I say just stab him, do it. She then tells them right now the kids are in the middle of like a fun game, so he needs to stop traumatizing them, as he tells them, yeah, it's a game, and then he does his McGiggle laugh. So Felix then starts coughing as he's going into anaphylaxis, because it turns out Felix is actually allergic to dairy, which they add to chips, and I'm not sure if that means fries because they're Australian, but for all I know, it could just mean koala meat. Audrey's bag is gone because of that one zombie, so they only have one shot that they can use. David then uses that one shot and breaks the needle, as Felix then tells David not to go out there. So Audrey then heads out to go grab the bag from the tractor, as David stays with Felix as she begins running to go find it, but unfortunately she finds a locked gate and then just sits there from it. Just hurdle a gal. So taking off once more, there's bits of animal and human everywhere, and Felix ain't looking so hot. Audrey then grabs a shovel as she starts knocking all of them down, which, why not just run around them? They're pretty slow. So finding the scarecrow zombie from earlier, she then takes his head off as the others get back up. So interestingly, this sort of brings up a bit of a question. Are these zombies in the traditional sense, or are they just infected, as Well Such Gaming says? Obviously, removing the head is the perfect way to get rid of them. I think that's just standard, but it appears as though bodily shots, they don't work that well to prevent them from getting back up, but they definitely, I think they are alive, so what's the deal? Well, I believe I can kind of explain it like this. First, I believe the metabolism is still at play. Ergo, the rules of biology still apply to these creatures. Break the spine, they can't walk. Cause enough blood loss, they can't continue on. Damage enough organs, they go into mods and die. They are dealing with a severe infection. With this infection, given what we see, the blood may thicken to a degree, which you're like, well, why does it thicken? Well, it's highly likely a cytokine storm has hit the body due to the rapid onset of the illness. So what does a cytokine storm actually do? Well, cytokine storms are basically the nuclear option for the body when it detects that it is losing the fight in a big way, and this triggers a massive inflammatory response which will draw fluid out of the blood vessels and into the surrounding tissue, swelling it. Along with this, it is common for blood clots to begin to form in the body because you're essentially losing all that fluid in your circulatory system. What I believe happened is under normal circumstances, the infected would actually bleed out. We also see when they get hit, their blood is still bright red, indicating oxygenated hemoglobin. Because of the cytokine storm, when incurring damage internally, it is very likely that all these injuries just have blood clots waiting not too far behind. This prevents a bleed out from the damage, and along with this, swelling the tissue could further seal off internal damage. Now again, this sounds like a good thing, like, oh, if I get shot, cytokine storm, baby, but it's not. Because this many blood clots in the body it's gonna lead to brain damage, it's gonna lead to heart damage, all your organs are gonna be damaged, basically everything, even worse than if you just got shot. So we'll talk about this further when we discuss what this disease is and how it jukes the immune system so effectively. So realizing that it's a better way to do things, actually just start hitting their heads off, they're powerless without their heads, she starts decapitating them. The younglings then start singing Shake It Off, which arguably is making things worse, as Audrey gets the bag on the tractor, finding that they are all the same, as then she starts searching them. So finding the right bag finally, she grabs the force enhancer as Felix is crashing out hard. Audrey then returns, covered in blood, as she gives him the shot, not letting Dave do it this time because he sucks, as then he starts breathing normally again. Audrey then tells Dave to call her Audrey again, because he keeps calling her Miss Caroline, as she says she got caught in a jam fight, which is why she's covered in red stuff. As the shot then sets in, Felix will be fine. Of course, if this happens in real life to you, you need to go to the hospital next. Just because you are momentarily good doesn't mean that you didn't eat something you aren't allergic to, in which case he did. Which would mean that's actually still in your stomach, so once that medication wears off, you could still have a similar issue. So as they sit there, McGiggle then hears a helicopter as he starts saying, "They found him. I'm an A-list celebrity, they're gonna rescue me," as then he emerges from the ceiling. Like, he literally says they're gonna come looking for him. Why? So he trips and falls off the roof down to the zombies, and as he tries to get in, Audrey just kind of looks at him like, no. So McGiggle then goes to run off as David tries to pull him up, which actually he succeeds before he even gets bit. So much like Blippi, McGiggle then says he's been a bad man. I swear to God, Blippi, apart from the Harlem Shake video, I just feel it in my soul. Something is wrong. I'm not trying to hate, and I'm not allegedly. You know what? I don't have to say allegedly because I'm not accusing him of anything. I just feel off. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, this is not to shit on Blippi. That man's good enough at doing that. So anyways, McGiggle says he's a bad guy because he's just been banging a bunch of moms. And I mean, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? Dave then asks what his name is, as Teddy McGiggle isn't even his real name. I mean, you don't say. Completely out of alcohol, McGiggle has now entered forced sobriety and has to dry out, and he also literally crapped his pants. So the military has now arrived in Pleasant Valley, as then they pull out a map of the surrounding area from the tourist info kiosk. Good lord. One of the soldiers suggests that they drop a concussive force detonator directly in the store where everyone is hiding because they're unaware anyone is even alive in Pleasant Valley, which, given that these are slow zombies, as stated by the soldiers instead of the fast ones, why not go in there and see if there are any survivors? Audrey then sings to the younglings that night about not wanting to live on the moon, which is very understandable, as parents have started gathering outside of Pleasant Valley yelling at the military. They ask why they are there, as then one soldier says, zombies again. So these guys have accidentally done this more than once. You even know if they're fast versus slow. Like, containment procedures, what are those, I guess? So Tess then calls David but can't get through, as everyone then starts going to sleep. Beth says she's scared and can't sleep, as Felix then starts to sing to her. Audrey, having watched David teach Felix how to sing, is jazzed about it, as that one guy from earlier still has Audrey's bag. So McGiggle then finds some water but has issues drinking it, I guess. You know, the delirium tremens are acting up. As Audrey then sits with Dave, he apologizes for swearing so much. Audrey then says she's terrified too, and then asks if David even wants kids, and he's like, nah, me and my girlfriend split up, so probably not right now. Basically, back in the day, Tess and Dave's dad left when he was like around Felix's age or so. So since then, he doesn't want to have any kids. They then discuss their love over Neil Diamond, as back when Audrey was 18, she ended up chasing a band around Australia. She was following them, and their name was Hanson. Yeah, that mbop thing. Good God, what? So she got security called on her because she broke into their room, and then she jumped out the window and broke her collarbone. So she got a job to pay for her medical bills in Australia, and then she just ended up staying, and that job was her being a teacher's assistant. Her fiance also cheated on her around that point, so she keeps wearing the ring to stop dads from hitting on her, but that's pretty much it. Dave then tells her his band fell apart 6 years ago, and he's not even Christian, but it's never too late to side with the Lord. So Audrey then offers to take first watch, as Dave says, we'll handle it. Well, he'll handle it. She's single also. So, you're telling me there's a chance. The military then calls through, saying that they will proceed with the bombing within about 1 hour. They're talking to each other, they're not talking to anybody there. So Dave then says they need to get out of there as they approach McGiggle with their plan. He says they should just stay there because someone will notice that he's missing. McGiggle then says if we need to eat, we can just eat one of the kids, because that's a good option. And I mean, he kind of looks like the kind of guy who wouldn't just subsist off his own stored up nutrients and instead would consume a youngling, so on brand. McGiggle then keeps calling Dave a fatso for some reason, which the projection is wild. He also goes on to say the tractor is slow and they're idiots for even considering it, but they could take the McGiggle mobile, as there is a flap on the... Honestly, I'm not getting into the McGiggle mobile. I would rather hang out with the zombies. Anyways, they can just have the kids jump down into the flap, and then they could just get out of there. Audrey then slaps McGiggle as he asks her to go 20 toes to Jesus with them, as then they get ready to go. So getting to the roof, McGiggle then falls and the younglings are hungry, and also the game is boring to them, so they're crashing out. Also, how does he keep falling off the roof? The slope is not that great. So Dave then starts singing to Audrey to the tune of Sweet Caroline, which nothing gets white people more amped than Sweet Caroline for some reason. Dave then goes to, like, genuinely, have you ever been to a bar and they break this out? Yeah, I don't know. I find myself getting amped as well. So Dave then calls Felix awesome, as I now realize Australians, they say give me a cuddle rather than give me a hug. Interesting. So heading to the roof, they then look out and see the McGiggle mobile has a lot of zombies in the way of it. McGiggle then cries as Dave tells him to do it for Pacino, as David then bangs on a bucket, getting the zombies' attention. There's another wise man with another accent similar to yours. It says, just give them the slip. McGiggle then falls off the roof once more, not snapping his spine for a third time as he begins his run out towards the McGiggle mobile. Jumping down, David gets almost immediately grabbed as he literally didn't pay attention to anything behind him, as McGiggle then focuses on throwing zombie kids and hitting them in the head. Grabbing one, McGiggle then bites one of the kids, which is a brilliant plan there, brother. Then he gets to the car, and we have no idea if the bites are the only thing that causes this, or like how it spreads. So let's discuss that. So given that this is a direct exposure event, and there's no reason to think that, you know, others may have not been bitten on the arm or the leg, which they still turned, but maybe not as fast as everyone else, I would have to assume then that this is not a blood-borne illness, but instead is focused directly within the salivary glands. This being the most clear indicator, as otherwise he would have most definitely been infected in moments if it was based on the blood. So quite literally, just avoid being bitten. Groundbreaking, I know. David then gets into the car next, or tries to get in the car, as McGiggle locks him out and flips him the bird. Yeah, no shot you could trust that guy. Frogsy then comes out of the back and eviscerates McGiggles as he calls for help, and then his face gets ripped off. I mean, I feel nothing for the guy, but that looks like it hurt. So that's the end of that guy, as David then crawls on top as the zombies surround him, with Frogsy making an appearance as David grabs him. Tess then gets through on the phone, which indicates that if they were blocking the signal, then how did he get the call? I think it was just poor signal in Pleasant Valley, so that explains that. So as David then says they need to get someone to help, he then thanks Tess for stepping up when things went bad with his mom after the dad left, and then he drops his phone by accident. The kids are all crashing out as Max starts throwing a temper tantrum because he wants to go play mini golf, with Beth telling Audrey that Felix is gone as he runs out going full Vader with a golf club as he grabs a lamb in the corner that somehow didn't get eaten. Felix then goes to grab it but gets cornered by zombies, but using the force, the gate closes. Absolute baller status. And then for some reason, the zombies are now trying harder to break in as they also surround David. Holding on to Frogsy so that thing doesn't get out, Felix shows up with a tractor as he starts running stuff down. The offspring at this point say it doesn't really matter if they win the game as they crash the tractor through the wall. They get everyone loaded up as then she asks who wants to play putt-putt golf. Smacking the zombies on the way out to keep them off of the actual tractor, they begin their trek out of there. Grabbing Audrey's bag on the way, she then starts singing with the zombies in tow slowly following them. The tractor being almost the same exact speed as the zombies. I mean, it beats walking out of there, I suppose, but then the zombies start groaning as she keeps singing. So through the power of music, the zombies also still have some mental faculties as they copy the kids. So this is another point that supports my idea that the brain is still functional. The communication is just disrupted. It's a monkey see, monkey do sort of situation. Instinctually, humans actually copy what other humans do all the time. It's how we learn how to really just do anything. The zombies are no different. They have just been bussed down to a lower level of cognitive function. Instead of abstract thinking that we're mostly capable of, they now replicate what they see unconsciously. And as a result, clapping, groaning, or whatever another group is doing, they do themselves. Humans are known to do this at around like the infant and toddler stage more specifically, so we can assume that the brains, due to the white matter disruption, have cognitively declined to about this level. The blood clots killing the brain tissue is also probably not helping the situation in the slightest. So outside the perimeter there, the military lines up spotting the tractor approaching in the distance. Seeing that they are survivors, one suggests maybe they could be infected. Yeah, and your face is lame. They decide to obliterate it instead of helping. Wow. Way to be Turd Fergusons about it. Hearing the zombies sing, however, Dave then yells out that they have kids with them. This makes Mr. Military Man upset as he says he can't light up kids. Not again. Alright, so they let them through as then they proceed to light up the rest of the zombies, and I mean truly, that was your only option. So a bomber flies overhead at this point as then it heads to drop the big one, turning it into Unpleasant Valley, or Unpleasant Crater, as David then kisses Audrey as a Moab, whatever, goes off in the distance. I mean, it could have been a nuke, but I doubt that given like the nuclear fallout, as all the younglings now get grabbed and are taken away to make sure that they aren't infected. At the base, the commander then heads into the good news room, as he says, as he informs them that the kids got caught up in a situation. He says it could have been a lot worse if not for their teachers. Audrey and David protected the kids in a potentially lethal situation. They need to monitor them for the next 48 hours, as Tess then says they must be terrified, but not really, as David has given in to the Swiftie cult as they sing in their quarantine. Heading into the viewing room to make sure their offspring are all good, Tess then watches her brother slowly devolve into madness. Truly tragic. And thus concludes Little Monsters. Oh, and then we get Hanson in the credits. Have you ever really listened to the lyrics of this song? It's about getting old and who's going to be there and really going to care when you get older. Probably only the people that care about you now. Dang. So what is this illness? Well, let's wrap this up by looking at the symptoms. It's clear it's not bloodborne in any capacity. The speed at which it operates means that the macrophage is tasked with engulfing pathogens doesn't even have time to react when it's introduced into the body, which allows for the sickness to basically rapidly spread, taking over the neuronal system. Once the body realizes that this is happening, the adaptive immune response never really even has a chance to activate. So as a result, the cytokine storm is just induced right out of the gate, causing the swelling and coagulation of blood. As the illness hits the brain, it enters the white matter, disrupting communication of the gray matter, bringing the human mind to a point of almost infant or toddler functionality. And this shows that they are still in there, but they are driven by instinct of biting, consuming, and then moving on to the next area. It's clear the hunger that they feel is somewhat insatiable, and that the sensory neurons are afflicted with this issue too. Because of this, I would have to say, this is hilariously a form of rabies, and don't you dare click off. Don't be a dork. Look, it spreads via the salivary glands, it has a propensity to target white matter, which, I mean, basically, rabies targets your peripheral nervous system because that's usually where it gets into, and it wants to go to the central nervous system. It's clear once entering the white matter neurons, it immediately disrupts their ability to function, so the brain is alive, it just cannot talk amongst itself, and also some of it is very clearly dying from, blood clots. Massive strokes all over the brain is a good way to look at that. And because the brain has entered this state of being bust down intellectually, biting, much like everyone else does as a toddler, is back on the menu. This unfortunately has the horrific effect of spreading this disease even further, given that it moves into the salivary glands. And because of this, I would say it is very much so at least a rabies-based virus, possibly gain of function to disrupt cellular function concerning neurons rather than just encephalopathy and aggression as a result. But as always, I want to hear what you guys think. I know rabies is a classic on this channel and people dunk on it, but I think it's the main virus, and it most certainly is. If you have a different idea of what it could be, please let me know down in the comments. But if you enjoyed, leaving a like would be great of you, it helps get the video out there. And subscribing is also awesome. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and games link in the description. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like our astronauts. Let me try that again in English. I'd like to thank our astronauts, Army and Tristan Kessick. Thank you guys for your awesome support. Next, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Desk Dancer, and Feather. Thank you guys as well. And to my scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System, Official Texan, Stutz, and the victorious return of Chad the Enjoyer of Scientific Explanations of B-grade horror movies. I do appreciate y'all's support as well. And the rest of my patrons, you guys are absolute ballers. It keeps everything running smoothly, keeps the lights on, feeds the kitties, all those good things. So it is greatly appreciated, so thank you. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.